Every culture has its own story of how our world was created, and the cultural practices influenced by these stories are passed down from one generation to the next. The stories of how the Norse gods came to be are no different, and can be traced back to the ancient Norse people who lived in a place we now call modern-day Scandinavia. That would be Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Iceland. These stories came from the early records of the Norse people, written in Iceland in the 13th century. The collection of these stories was referred to as the sagas. From what we will discuss in this video, they may sound completely wild. Let's start with the story of creation. In the beginning, there was this massive empty space called Ginnungagap. On either side of this space is where you'll find the icy Niflheim and the fiery Muspelheim. Over time, as these two worlds grew stronger, they began to compete for space. When the ice and fire finally met in the middle, they created water droplets that fell into the abyss and created life. The first living being was a giant named Ymir, who was equal male and female. Other giants were born from Ymir, but things changed when the gods Odin, Vili, and Ve arrived. Odin and his brothers killed Ymir and created the world from his body. His flesh became the earth, his bones became mountains, and his blood formed the seas. After that, they gave life to the first humans, Ask and Embla, and built Asgard, their home. What sets the Norse gods apart is that they aren't seen as flawless beings. Despite all their powers, they still made mistakes and had very human traits. In many ways, they reflected the admirable qualities and the flaws found in people, and their legacy continues to influence our world. This is reflected in something as simple as the days of the week. Ever wonder why Thursday is called Thursday? Well, it's Thor's day, named after the god of thunder himself. Wednesday, that's Woden's day, which refers to Odin, the father of the gods. Even Friday is tied to Freya, the goddess of love and fertility. But the influence of the Norse gods doesn't just stop at our calendar. It reflects on our holiday season too. A good example is the Yule festival, which is done in the festive spirit of gathering loved ones together during the winter. This is similar to Christmas. While modern Christmas has strong Christian roots, there's no denying that many of the festive traditions we know today were influenced by Norse Yule customs. Beyond their influence on culture, Norse mythology can also be connected to the modern paganism religion. In fact, many people today in Iceland practice Asatru, which focuses on honoring the Norse gods and preserving ancient customs. Here's a little story on that. In 2016, a survey found that no Icelanders under the age of 25 believed in the creation story from the Christian Bible. Well, Icelanders weren't Christians from the start. They were practicing pagans until they had to abandon it and adopt Christianity in 1000 AD. One would have thought they converted because they were convinced by the new religion, but that was not the case. They converted so that their Nordic neighbors would trade with them instead of seeing them as heathens. But today, there has been a resurgence of Norse paganism. The modern church of Icelandic paganism is called Asatru. Asatru started again through a group of passionate locals in 1973 and has continued to grow. It is the fastest growing religion in the country to date. Even if you don't believe in paganism, chances are you've encountered Norse gods in a different form, that is, pop culture. Marvel movies have made us familiar with characters like Thor, Loki, and even Odin. They have transformed ancient mythology into superhero stories that captivate millions. Today, it's quite difficult to separate the gods from their cinematic characters, but they are just one example of how Norse mythology continues to inspire modern storytellers. The Marvel versions of Thor and Loki might differ a bit from their mythological counterparts. Their presence in our media shows just how far and deep they influence our movies. It doesn't end there. Even if you're not a movie person, there are chances that you play games and must have come across video games like God of War. In this game, characters interact with Norse gods and monsters while exploring richly detailed worlds drawn from mythology. Another great example is Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which is a great game, by the way. This game takes players deep into the Viking world with reference to the importance of the gods in the daily lives of ancient Norse people. And then there are TV shows like Vikings that have brought the Norse gods' mythology into entertainment. Through these shows, Audiences get to know how important the gods were to the lives of the Norse people, as well as a glimpse of the complex relationships between humans and the divine. Some books are also inspired by Norse mythology. If you love to read books, you may have come across the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, which are heavily inspired by Norse myth. He has books on Middle-earth, elves and dwarves, and was the author of The Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit book series. Tolkien wasn't the only one to do this, as many other fantasy writers have drawn from Norse mythology, using it as a rich source of inspiration for their own creativity. It's not hard to see why. Themes of gods, heroes, monsters, and epic battles are timeless and will continue to captivate readers. Norse influence has also made its way into modern symbolism. Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, is a symbol you'll often see in necklaces or amulets. For many, it's a symbol of strength and protection, much like it was for the ancient Norse people. But it's not just the symbols that have stuck around. The philosophies and ideas behind Norse mythology still sit with many people today. Concepts like heroism, honor, and fate are still powerful ideas in modern culture. People still believe that warriors go to Valhalla, the hall of the slain, after they die in battle. This idea of an honorable death and eternal glory in the afterlife is something that still inspires our world, whether it's through literature, movies, or even discussions about what it means to live a good life. However, it's important to mention that not all uses of Norse mythology in the modern world have been positive. Some symbols like the runes and Mjolnir have been misused by extremist groups to promote hate or nationalist ideologies. It's unfortunate, but these groups use images of the ancient Norse to suit their own purposes, changing what these symbols originally stood for. In response, there's been an effort by historians, scholars, and fans of Norse culture to reclaim these symbols, reminding people of their true meanings rooted in history and mythology rather than modern hate movements. At the end of the day, the legacy of the Norse gods is far more than just a collection of old stories. Their influence is all around us, and it is evident. The ancient Norse may be long gone, but their gods live on, not only in books and stories, but in the hearts and minds of people around the world. So the next time you hear the rumble of thunder, remember that Thor might be making his presence known. If you enjoyed this video, follow us for more content on ancient myths and legends you don't want to miss. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.